The sun was sinking fast, bleeding gold and rust across the flat, dry horizon of Black Hollow. Dust curled up from the dirt road like smoke from a dying fire. The last wagon of the day rattled into the yard of the Callahan Ranch, drawn by a mule. Too thin to last another week. The driver didn't say a word, just tipped his hat, let the girl off, and rode away without looking back. She stepped down slowly, no bonnet, no suitcase. Just a bundle of burlap tied to her back and a cast-iron skillet held tight in her hands like it was worth its weight in gold. Rhett Callahan watched from the porch, boot heels propped on the rail, hat tilted forward to block the sun. A piece of straw danced between his lips. His eyes, gray like morning smoke, narrowed at the sight of her small thing, shoulders square like she'd wrestled worse than weather, and eyes darker than used gun metal. She walked up the steps, quiet, chin. "Hi, got a name?" he asked. She looked down, then up, shook her head. "You mute?" Pause, then a slow nod, his brow furrowed. "And you're here to—" She shifted the skillet in her hand, wiped the back of her knuckles across her mouth, then scrawled something. In the dust at her feet, with her toe dot cook dot that made him blink. "Well," he muttered, glancing at the dozen or so ranch hands leaning against the corral fence, watching like it was a show. "You don't look like you could lift a sack of flour, much less cook for 20. She finally opened her mouth. The voice that came out was low, gravelly, broken like a fence post in a storm. "I don't talk much, mister, but I can cook." Dead silence. A tumbleweed scraped its way across the yard. One of the hands snorted. "Might be the funniest thing I've heard all week. She's got a skillet and a whisper. That's it." Rhett didn't laugh. Instead, he stood, walked down the steps, and stopped a foot from her. His eyes dropped to the skillet. Well-seasoned, old, black as midnight, and smooth as river stone. He looked back at her face. Dirty, worn, but not broken. "All right," he said. "Show me." The Callahan Ranch kitchen hadn't seen real magic since Rhett's wife died 2 winters back. Since then, the hands made do with coffee that could kill and beans that tasted like regret. She didn't speak another word, just tied up her hair, took her skillet, and went to work like she'd been born beside a fire. Flames danced. Butter hissed. The air filled with the smell of cornbread, eggs, onions, and pepper so sharp it tickled every man's nose in memory. Even old Tobias, who hadn't tasted seasoning since the war, leaned forward like a bloodhound. She plated it simple. Tin trays. A line of grub that smelled like forgiveness and hunger all at once, and when they tasted it, no one spoke. A few seconds passed before Curtis, the mouthiest hand on the payroll, muttered, "Holy hell, I'd marry her." Another murmured, "That cornbread just kissed my soul." Rhett took his bite last, chewed slow, thought slower. Then he looked at her and said the words that would change both their lives. "You're hired." She didn't smile. Not yet. Just nodded once and went back to cleaning the skillet with care, like it was more than a pan more, like a shield. That night, she was given the small cabin near the smokehouse. 4 walls, 1 cot, a window that stuck. No questions asked. She unpacked nothing but a small square of cloth that she laid by the bed. A torn edge of a photograph. Only the corner of a face remained, a jawline, a pair of lips, and the hint of a man's uniform. She stared at it until the moon rose. Rhett didn't sleep much that night. He stood on the porch, cradling a mug of burnt coffee, listening to the coyotes sing in the distance. The girl, he didn't even know her name. Didn't need to. Something about her reminded him of his own late wife. Strong, scarred, and stubborn enough to outlive hell. But something else twisted in his gut. She was running. That was plain and trouble. Trouble always rides behind folks like her. Morning came with gunmetal skies and a breeze that smelled of coming rain. She was already up, already cooking. When Rhett walked into the kitchen, she slid him a plate without a word. Biscuits this time. Gravy thicker than sin. Eggs whipped soft and buttery. He hadn't eaten like this in years. She didn't wait for praise. Just handed him coffee and wiped the counter. "You from around here?" he asked between bites. She didn't look up, just shook her head. "Got people?" A pause, then a long blink. "No, Dot." He set the cup down. "You got a name?" She picked up a rag, wiped the counter slower this time. Still no answer. That's when he noticed, under her sleeve, at the wrist, a scar. Pale, raised. The kind rope makes when it's pulled tight. His jaw clenched. He didn't ask anything else. The next few days passed with whispers. The hands joked less and worked more. Something about her changed the rhythm of the place. Tobias said, "It's like having a ghost in the kitchen, but one that feeds ya." She became part of the daily routine, always silent, always cooking, and always watching. She had a habit of looking over her shoulder, jumping when boots hit the porch too hard, flinching when men laughed too loud. Something in her had learned fear and buried it deep. One night, while Rhett was oiling his saddle, young Billy ran up from town, breathless. "Sheriff says there's a man a skin round, looking for a girl. Says she don't talk much, carries a skillet." Rhett didn't move for a long moment. Then, without a word, he went to the barn and checked his shotgun. The next morning, the skillet was already sizzling before the rooster even opened its beak. Rhett walked into the kitchen, shotgun leaning against the wall, eyes heavier than usual. He hadn't slept. Not after Billy's warning. But there she was, the girl, already halfway through breakfast. Bacon crisped at the edges, coffee percolated, biscuits rising in the oven like clouds in a hot sky. He stood in the doorway, watching her like she might disappear into smoke. "Someone's a skin about you in town," he said, voice low. Her hand stopped mid-stir. The spoon trembled just once. Then she set it down, slow, careful. "I won't ask," he added. "But I'd be a fool not to know trouble sniffing your trail." She reached into her apron, pulled out a folded piece of old newspaper, unfolded it, and handed it to him. It was a wanted poster. And there he was, a man with a crooked smile, long hair, eyes like a wolf. Jed Crowley. $500 reward, dead or alive. Murder, arson, theft, unlawful confinement. Beneath his face, scrawled in faint pencil, 2 words. "He owns me." Rhett stared at the paper. The edges were worn from folding and unfolding, like she carried it to remind herself she wasn't crazy, or maybe to never forget what she ran from. "He your husband?" he asked Dot. She shook her head, then nodded. That was answer enough. At dinner that night. May, for that was the name Rhett had silently started calling her, made stew so rich it made grown men go quiet. That's how you knew her food was good. Not by what was said, but by what wasn't. She still hadn't spoken since that first night, but she didn't need to. Her presence was louder than most men's mouths. One of the younger ranch hands, Jessie, leaned over and whispered to Rhett, "She don't speak, but it's like she's always listening." "She is," Rhett replied, eyes locked on her. That's how she survived. Later that week, Black Hollow hosted its annual branding festival, a rough, dusty affair with whiskey, music, and every ranch for 20 miles swinging through town. Rhett had no plans to go. May didn't ask Dot, but then she surprised him. She cooked early that day, left a small, neat note on his table. Her handwriting was like her, quiet, careful, with just a hint of something buried underneath. "I would like to go. I won't stay long." So they went. She wore her same clothes, brown skirt, work boots, and a scarf tied around her neck like armor. But her hair was clean brushed, tucked back in a braid that made her look younger, stronger. People stared, whispered, but no one dared say a word after she entered the cook-off competition. The judge was the saloon owner's wife. The other cooks were beefy ranch matrons with generations of spice secrets. May? She had only her skillet dot and her silence. She made one dish, pan-fried cornbread with spicy honey butter and a smoked venison. Gravy so good the judge cried and didn't even apologize for it. Dot, when they handed her the blue ribbon, she didn't smile, but her eyes glimmered. Rhett saw it. So did everyone else. That's when folks stopped whispering. They started saying things like, maybe she's not crazy, just strong, and reckon she's got more grit than half the boys I've hired. Rhett saw the way she held herself walking back to the wagon. Not like a ghost anymore, more like a survivor. That night, the air smelled like rain. May stood outside her cabin, washing the skillet at the pump, when Rhett approached. He'd been drinking a little, not enough to be foolish, but enough to say what he hadn't yet said. You ever think about talking again? He asked. She paused. Then she wrote with her finger on the damp railing. Talking got me hurt. He leaned beside her, arms folded. I talk too much, he admitted. Ain't done me much good either. She looked at him. For real this time, and her lips twitched just a little. The next morning, the rider came. Not yet. Not yet. Just a thin man with snake eyes and a dust-covered coat. He tied up his horse outside the general store. Asked about a girl. Didn't give a name. Just said she was quiet, traveled light, and carried a black skillet. Billy overheard. Sent word. Rhett loaded his rifle. May didn't run. Instead, she picked up the piece of paper she'd carried all this time, Yet's poster, and burned it over the stove. She watched the flames climb, licking the edges, eating him away, until he was just ash. Then she looked at Rhett and whispered the second thing she'd ever said. If he comes, I'll finish it. That evening, Rhett came home to find a note folded neatly beside his plate. It wasn't a recipe. My name is May Deering. I was married at 16. He kept me tied up. He told me I was nothing, but I am not nothing, and I am not afraid anymore. Thank you for giving me a roof, Mr. Callahan. I'll cook until my hands stop working, but I won't run anymore. He read it twice, then 3 times. And finally, he folded it like it was scripture, put it in his breast pocket, and poured himself a whiskey so strong it made his eyes water. The next morning, as sunrise stretched long shadows across the ranch, Rhett found her already working the dough for biscuits. Same steady rhythm, same quiet strength, but now she was humming, just a little tune, like the kind mamas hum when rocking babies. The kind no one taught you, the kind that lives deep in your bones. Outside, storm clouds rolled across the plains. Something was coming, but inside the kitchen, there was warmth. And the smell of something that felt, for the first time in years, like home. The rain came hard that night. Thunder cracked across Black Hollow like pistol fire, and the wind slammed against the ranch house as if trying to break in. But inside the kitchen, the light glowed soft, and May's stew simmered gently on the stove. Rhett sat at the table, one arm bandaged from a wild bronco he'd broken that morning. Jesse snored on the porch, and the dogs barked now and then at shadows, too stubborn to stay put. May ladled stew into bowls without a word, placing one in front of Rhett with a half-smile that was almost comfortable. You ever think about staying? He asked. She looked up. I mean longer than a season, he added. You've got a place here, with the ranch, with me. May's eyes softened. But then, a knock. Not on the door, On the window, sharp. Deliberate. 4 knocks. Then silence. Rhett stood slowly. May didn't move. He walked to the door, cracked it open with the barrel of his shotgun in hand, and there he stood, Jed Crowley, dripping wet, tall, lean, and smiling like the devil at a church potluck. "Well now," Jed drawled, "ain't this the coziest little picture I ever did see?" May didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stepped back into the kitchen and gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles turned white. Rhett stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "You got 10 seconds to get off my land," he said. Jed tipped his hat, casual like. "You must be the cowboy. The one feedin' her, keepin' her warm. But see, she's mine, legal and branded, like a head of cattle." "Not any more," Rhett said, yet smile never faltered. "Law says different." Rhett's jaw tightened. "Law ain't here." Yet's hand hovered near his holster. "Rhett." Didn't flinch. "You pull that gun," Rhett growled. "You better not miss." Jed laughed. "Oh, I ain't here to kill no cowboy. Not tonight. I just wanted to see her face. Let her know I found her. You tell her I'll be back come sunrise." He turned and vanished into the storm like he was part of it. Inside, May stood at the stove, breathing like a wild animal cornered. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. "I'll stop him," Rhett said. Her voice, barely audible, came from the shadows. "Don't. He'll kill you. I faced worse. Not like him." That night, no one slept. Rhett cleaned his rifle and paced the floor. May sat by the fire, staring into the flames. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the memories clawing back. She remembered the cellar he locked her in, the rope burns, the endless meals she had to cook with blood on her apron, and the silence forced, not chosen, until she ran. Now at dawn, she stood in the kitchen. She wasn't wearing her apron. She wore her old boots, a wool shawl, and on the counter she laid out her tools like a gunslinger before a duel. A butcher knife, razor sharp, her skillet, cleaned and seasoned to a shine, and a small vial of ash, the remnants of the wanted poster. Rhett entered, eyes bloodshot. "You can stay inside," he said. "I'll deal with him." She shook her head. "I'm not hiding anymore." Jed came back at sunup, on horseback this time, armed, confident. But when he saw her standing in front of the house, hands at her sides, eyes steady, he faltered. "You look like hell," he said. "So do you," May replied. It was the first time she'd spoken to him in years. He smiled crooked. "Come on now, you've had your fun. Let's go home." "This is my home." Yet's face darkened. "You think that cowpoke can protect you? He's just one man. I'm not asking him to." She stepped forward, pulling the skillet from her side. He laughed. "That your weapon? A frying pan?" "It's what I survived with." In a flash, Jed dismounted, drew his revolver. But Rhett was faster. One shot cracked the morning air. Yet's gun flew from his hand. Blood streaked across his forearm. He staggered, roared, charged. May didn't run. She swung the skillet with everything she had. The cast iron crashed into his temple with a sickening thud. He dropped to his knees, stunned. Then Rhett stepped forward and punched him square in the jaw. Jed collapsed into the dirt. Out cold. The sheriff came hours later. He'd heard the shot. "Brought the deputy," Rhett explained. May backed it with the bruises on her wrists. Jed was arrested, bleeding and half-conscious. No one wept for him. Before they hauled him off, May knelt beside him. "You didn't break me," she said. He didn't respond. She turned her back on him and never looked again. That evening, Rhett found her sitting on the porch steps. A pot of chili bubbled beside her, untouched. "You all right?" he asked. I think so. He sat beside her. Why the skillet? She stared into the horizon, then smiled faintly. It was the only thing I owned he didn't take. He said cooking was all I was good for. So I made it my weapon. Rhett chuckled. Well? Hell, I've seen bullets do less damage. A quiet moment passed. Then she said, I might talk more now. I'd like that, he replied. That night, the ranch was silent again. But it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the peace that comes after a storm. And in the kitchen, her skillet hung proudly on a hook above the stove. Like a badge, like a symbol, like a weapon she no longer had to swing because she'd already won. A week passed. The dust Jed Crowley stirred had long since settled, carried off with the wind and the memory of boots that no longer stomped across Callahan Ranch. The scars he left behind, on skin, in memory, didn't vanish, but something shifted. May stayed, not because she had nowhere else to go, but because, for the first time, she wanted to. The kitchen bloomed not with flowers, but with fresh bread, simmering herbs, and quiet laughter that echoed through the rafters like a ghost learning to sing. She still didn't speak much, but when she did, it was never wasted. A dry remark here, a soft joke there. The ranch hands, once skeptical, now fought over whose turn it was to help her chop vegetables or haul water. Even Tobias carved her a wooden spoon with her initials, M.D., and blushed when she touched his shoulder in thanks. The men joked. May could tame a wild horse just by cooking it breakfast. Rhett never corrected them. One cool evening, May stood barefoot on the porch, arms folded over her chest, eyes tracing the stars as if they were old friends. Rhett stepped out beside her, a tin mug in hand. They say if you tell the stars a secret, he said, they carry it forever. She tilted her head. That's a lot of secrets, she said softly. He grinned. I reckon the sky can handle. May hesitated, then spoke. When I was small, I used to dream of owning a stove. Not a dress, not a house. Just a stove I could cook on, without someone yelling at me. Rhett looked toward the lit window where her cast-iron skillet hung by the hearth. Well, he said, you've got one now. I do, she whispered, and no one's yelling. The next day, a traveling preacher came by the ranch, offering blessings in exchange for stew. May fed him twice and sent him away with a jar of jam. That night, Rhett sat beside her by the fire, fiddling with his empty coffee mug. I was married once, he said. May nodded. You don't have to. I want to, he interrupted gently. Her name was Lila. She laughed in her sleep. Always put cinnamon in her coffee. Died 5 winters ago from fever. May set down her spoon. You loved her. I did. Do you still? He looked at her long and quiet. No, he said. I remember her. I honor her. But my heart, he paused. It found a second beat. The next morning, May didn't cook. Instead, Rhett did. Eggs half burned, toast too dry. She laughed. Loud. Like a storm breaking. And all the men cheered. Like they'd won a prize bull at auction. Spring came early. The soil softened. Wildflowers grew along the fence posts. The sky held fewer storms and more sun. May planted a garden behind the smokehouse. Tomatoes, onions, basil. Food not just for feeding bellies, but for tending roots. You're staying for good, aren't you? Rhett asked one afternoon as he watched her in the dirt. She looked up, wiping sweat from her brow. I think the ground knows it before I do. One hot evening, the ranch held a dance. Old fiddle, rough wood floor, laughter, pie, and whiskey that could strip paint. May stood in the shadows watching, hands folded, smiling like someone afraid. To blink, Rhett offered her his hand. You ain't gotta, he said. I want to, she replied. and they danced out slow, swaying under the moonlight, her head resting against his chest. Neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. The music did the talking, and the wind carried it away. That night, in the quiet after, she whispered in the dark, "You saw me when I didn't want to be seen." Rhett turned toward her in the dim firelight. "No, I saw you when you were trying to remember who you were." She traced the scar on her wrist, the one Jed left. "I thought I was nothing, a ghost who could cook." He gently touched her hand. "You're the woman who turned silence into strength, and stew into a reason to stay alive." Some nights later, they hung a sign on the gate. Callahan Ranch and Kitchen Home of the Iron Skillet people came from towns over just to taste May's cooking. She hired 3 girls from the orphanage to teach. Taught them how to cook, sure, but more than that, how to stand straight. "You ain't just hands in a kitchen," she told them once. "Your heart's on fire." They never forgot it, Dot, and one day, just before summer, a letter arrived. It was addressed to Mrs. May Deering, but stamped from the county courthouse. Inside, official word: Jed Crowley had died in a prison brawl. No trial, no last words. May read it slowly, then threw it in the fire. "I'm not his widow," she said aloud. "I'm just May." Years later, when folks told stories about the Callahan Ranch, they never started with Rhett. They started with her. With the girl who came carrying a skillet, and a silence thicker than sin. With the woman who never ran again, with the cook who stayed. They say not all warriors carry guns. Some carry cast iron and fire. And some, like May, carry a quiet so heavy it can bend steel until one day it sings instead. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because sometimes the strongest voices are the ones that don't talk much at all.